Good evening. You're watching Redwood Wonk. I'm with Dave Frank. My name is Eric Kirk. We are here to talk national news of the day. We're going to start with what's been in the political news all week, and particularly on this week on which we celebrate the Martin Luther King holiday. And we are talking the Voting Rights Act. The Democrats are putting it up to a vote. There has been debate over the past couple of days. They did manage to do, as Dave discussed last week, through an interesting parliamentary maneuver, get it to the floor for debate. They are debating, I believe, as we speak. Maybe they've stopped for the night. I don't know. And the debate has been rather intense. The rhetoric began with an intense speech last week by President Biden, which drew some criticism even from the Democrats, but it has not cooled off at all. And of course, the pressure has been put on the two Democratic senators who are not expected to switch their positions from to lift the filibuster for this one issue of the Voting Rights Act, even though Martin Luther King's family has urged them to, rallied them to do so, trying to revive what passed the Voting Rights Act before, which was the march from Selma to Birmingham, and in which John Lewis was seriously injured. The John Lewis bill is one of the two bills that is endangered by them refusing to do it. The other one is Manchin's own bill that he hoped would get some Republican interest. It got none, got water thrown on it right away. Manchin won't even set aside the filibuster long enough to support his own bill, and they appear to be unmoved. I'm not even sure that either Sinema or Manchin have participated in the debate yet. I've been looking for that all day, and I haven't found it. Maybe they will. But Dave, what have you got to say?
So this is a really interesting case. I unfortunately haven't had a chance to see anything that's happened so far today, but I'll check it out and try to get back in the loop on the most current thoughtful speeches that I've heard. People have been trying to get in touch with me and saying, you got to hear this, you got to hear that, but maybe we'll check it out later. But in this case, as you said, it appears Senator Schumer doesn't have the votes to get this passed. So they're trying this technique where they just they're giving these impassioned pleas, and they're trying to put people on the record. What has been floated now is talking about the idea of the talking filibuster. They're still lobbying behind the scenes to try to get this basically a slight rule change, which Senator Manchin has said in the past that he supports. And we've talked about it in reference, but I looked into it a little bit more. And what they're saying is if that happens, every senator would get a chance to speak and hold the floor, and it would take 60 votes to stop them. But the idea is that it's not forever, and that eventually all speakers would finish talking, because in theory, they're not just going to keep talking until Election Day. At some point, they would stop talking. And then the bill would only need the 51 vote threshold once they agreed to stop. So I think that's what I've seen as one of the ideas behind what the Hail Mary, I guess, that they're hoping for here, the Democrats. But as background, this is, some people say, well, it's in the Constitution. This is, why would they change it? But in fact, it's really a custom. And one of the customs, I think the first time this technique was used is 1837, when the Whig Party was trying to get Andrew Jackson. He had on his record that he was censored for something that he said or did, and they were trying to just remove it from the record, so that the talking filibuster was put in place. And so it's not something from the Constitution, and in fact, directly. And Manchin said in the past he would support it, but he's not willing to change for this one bill. He's saying sort of disingenuously, I think, that he wants any rule changes to be bipartisan. So as it stands right now, this looks to be a major defeat for the Democratic Party, and particularly the Senate. Trying to get something through, trying to make some impact. The president also trying to convince his peers, the party. And in fact, that means no legislation would be able to happen without 10 GOP senators. So a budget reconciliation is really the only way around a filibuster at this point, still, as long as Sinema and Manchin are continuing to not support it.
Not only is the filibuster not in the Constitution, but it's arguably unconstitutional. The Constitution was written that 51 votes is what gets something done in the Senate. If they had intended to make it 60 votes, they would have done that. That was the whole intention. Originally, the filibuster was a talking filibuster. They decided to make it that way because they wanted to save time and make it easier to do that. And so now we have all kinds of filibusters, whereas before you had to work for it. Now they've made it so easy to filibuster that you practically just have to send an email and you filibuster. It's way too easy to filibuster. That's part of the problem. And now you can filibuster at the front end. You can stop the debate so that you're not embarrassed. And that's part of the problem. And so part of the reason that the Democrats are doing this, I don't think the Democrats have expected to win this from the beginning. I think they want to basically embarrass the 2 Democrats and the 50 Republicans. They did it. They timed this for the Martin Luther King weekend. They want this. They want to say, okay, if you want to do this, you're going to go down in history as the 2 Democrats. That you're going to be known for this. You're not going to be known for anything else. You're certainly not passing any legislation. You're going to be known as the 2 Democratic senators who basically blocked the Voting Rights Act and are responsible for anything that comes of this, that follows. And it's very interesting because there is, I don't normally recommend people read the Washington Examiner. Not only, I don't criticize papers for being right-wing. There are some actually very well-written right-wing periodicals out there, but it's kind of a tabloid. It's about like the New York Post as far as I'm concerned. And but there's an interview of Governor Sununu from New Hampshire who was going to run against the Haas for Senate and was seen as probably the closest thing to a guaranteed winner. Apparently the reason he's not running is because he got in there and started talking to senators about what the game plan was once you got in there. And basically he said, well, we're going to do nothing for 2 years. We're just going to block. There's no game plan. There's not going to be any bipartisan legislation. We're just going to block everything for 2 years. And they were giddy about it. And he says, and then he said, well, you know what? You didn't really do anything in the 2 years that you had full power either. What is the story? And he said it was crickets. He said, I'm not going to go to the Senate to do nothing. I want to know what you're going to do. And they had no answers. Mitch McConnell had no answers for him. They don't go there to do anything. They basically go there to do nothing because that's basically what they want them to do. And it's not just about the filibuster. That is what the Republican Party is in there now, is to keep anything from happening, pretty much anything of significance. So he wants to stay in and be governor as to because he can get something done. And he went on to talk about what he's getting done. The Republicans blew it.
Eric, I love that you pointed this out because I actually prepared. We had talked about this a few times back and forth, and I thought, maybe it's a good time now in our last minute or two on this topic just to remind people the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. It's designed to reverse the 2013 Supreme Court decision striking down the Justice Department's pre-clearance of provisions of the Voting Rights Act, which basically that means that if a state that was formerly a Confederate state needs to, is interested in changing a voting rule, they would get Justice Department clearance first because their practice of not respecting the rights. And so this bill would do that, plus also have other states need pre-clearance depending on the topic, like if they had to relocate, if they were going to relocate a polling place or make a voter ID requirement. So that's what they're talking about blocking. And in the Freedom to Vote Act, I'm just going to rattle these off real fast. Election day as a national holiday, 2-week early voting, vote by mail in a drop box, accessible voting for people with disabilities, broaden the types of ID that would be accepted if voter ID was required, outlaw gerrymandering, eliminate voting roll purges, here's the big one. This is why I mentioned this. Campaign finance reform. It would limit dark money by requiring disclosure on all contributions above $10,000. And finally, small donor matching system for House candidates. It would be called the Election Assistance and Innovation Fund. They would match 6-to-1 any contributions that were received for House candidates, and it would not be funded by the general fund of the government. It would be funded instead by a special fund that was raised through corporate fines, penalties, and settlements for tax crimes and corporate crimes. So the reason I mention this is because those, I think, are the two key things that are really Manchin and Sinema are getting support behind the scenes: the ending of dark money and funding candidates outside of the scope of the traditional campaign funding.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens, but it looks like it's not going to pass. That takes us to the next topic.
The goals are the same for all Americans.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
Governor Reagan, as a matter of fact, began his political career campaigning around this nation against Medicare.
There you go again.
And I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
If Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor an irrevocable death penalty for the killer?
No, I don't, Bernard, and I think you know that I've opposed the death penalty during all of my life.
Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Okay. Will we ever see presidential debates again? I'm going to give a little bit. The news this week is that the National Republican Committee has basically stated that they are pulling out of the debating commission, the neutral debating commission, and until further notice, they are going to forbid any presidential candidates from their party from participating in presidential debates until there is what they call reform. And this is the fallout from the fact that Donald Trump had made certain demands of the debates and he didn't get them. And one of the debates didn't happen. There were certain things around the pandemic and the rest, but I want to provide a little bit of a history for context. The first presidential debates we had was, well, the famous one was the one between Kennedy and Nixon. And although intellectually they were equal, and I say that very candidly, Kennedy won because he was good looking. Nixon did not present well, but most people acknowledge that. It was very, well done. Nixon never again appeared in a presidential debate and run for anything, including his two presidential runs. We saw no presidential debates again until 1976. He refused to debate against Humphrey. He refused to debate against McGovern, and there were no debates, presidential debates in 1964 either. Then we had debates between Ford and Carter. Ford had some mishaps about, the Eastern Bloc and the rest, saying that anyway, and he kind of blew it. Although you don't say that those were decisive. That you had those, and then it became regular. It became a regular thing. And then in 1980, you had Reagan and Carter. And of course, the debates started to become more and more banal. I mean, the debate between Kennedy and Nixon, if you watch it, those are substantive debates between two heavyweight minds. But what everybody remembers from one of the two Reagan Carter debates is, there you go again. And everybody thought that's such a clever line. I remember I was 16 years old and I'm like, that's clever? I mean, I was 16 years old. I said, we have better, quips when we're sitting around my 16-year-old friends stoned. I mean, come on, it was just, but that's how he won, was that quip. And then in 1984, we had our first vice presidential debate, and that was with a woman, and that was another first. And so we've had them ever since. And sometimes they're decisive. And you had, Dukakis didn't come off well. He came off like a robot. He was supposed to be the intellectual of the two, but Bush did well. But Bush didn't do well against Clinton because he looked at his watch, right? And I started to notice even that it was less about the substance and more about, well, did he look presidential? Well, how did he come? Well, Benson had the line, "You're no Jack Kennedy," well, and all of this kind of stuff. And it just went on and on throughout the thing. But Republicans in recent years haven't fared very well in these debates. Obama did, just made McCain look like a grumpy old man at the end of the street yelling at the kids to get off his lawn, right? I mean, he looked cool. Obama had a bad first debate against Romney, but then just crushed Romney in the second two debates. Just when they let Obama be Obama, he just came out and completely took control. There was one moment there, right? So then, then Trump doesn't do well in debates because he doesn't like being contradicted by a woman. And then Biden, it looked good just because Trump kept interrupting, and everybody who wasn't a Trump fan did this. So we've got these debates. Republicans have not done well for the past 20 years. Did pretty well against Gore, but other than that, Kerry, that was the bright side. Republicans have not done well in recent years. The Democrats seem to do better at the debate. So Republicans really don't like these things anymore. They have not done well actually for the past 30 years. Clinton did better in all of the debates. They're looking for an excuse to get out of them.
Just for folks that don't know, the formal organization that is the sponsor, or the sponsor, I guess is the right word, of the presidential debates. It's literally called the Commission on Presidential Debates, right. And it serves the two leading parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, by setting the terms of what it takes to participate on that stage. So there's a duopoly since it was established in 1987, and their claim, if you ask them, it's that it's for the benefit of the American electorate that the general election debates between or among the leading candidates for the offices of president and vice president of the U.S. are a permanent part of the process. So literally, it's speaking of banal, common, it's like that. Like, let's just have a debate and only allow the people that we want. So at issue here, the Republican National Committee, what they're saying is that they're going to change their bylaws to ban their candidates from participation. And their quote is, this is from their chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel, "So long as the CPD appears intent on stonewalling meaningful reforms necessary to restore the credibility with the Republican Party as a fair and nonpartisan actor, the RNC will take every step to ensure future Republican candidates are given the opportunity elsewhere." So they want to set up a place that the debates are, where it's going to be held, the rules, who's going to get to go and who's going to get to participate, and that's kind of what that's what they're saying. And what they pointed at with this partisanship or bias, they're claiming that when the committee, when they said that they were going to, the commission, when they said that they were going to allow a virtual debate between Trump and Biden, that favored Biden. In fact, Trump actually, the main reason was really COVID, and that was the second debate that was scheduled.
Yes,
earlier,
which Trump didn't show up to.
Right. Earlier than that, though, there was a debate which he did show up to. He tested positive for COVID 3 days before the debate, and then he ultimately was hospitalized with severe illness. So they had a viable reason, a reasonable purpose for switching to virtual was because people are coming here with COVID, and it's putting there's a health and safety risk.
Yes. Yeah, and Trump didn't like it. He also didn't like the moderators that were chosen. Yeah. I mean, he didn't like it, and because he doesn't like any of them, anybody that's not from the right-wing news. And the Fox person chosen was, what's his name, who's no longer with Fox, who's left Fox, the guy who had the Sunday morning show. Chris Wallace, thank you. Yeah, Chris Wallace, who and he didn't like that. He was like the one reasonable guy on Fox News, and so he's right, and that's not. So they're using that. They don't like these things, and so right, and so and maybe the commission is a bit stodgy. They only have the major networks in there, and it's the same kind of people all the time, and sometimes the questions I think are dumb. I mean, I'm not always impressed with them, and sometimes they don't have any control at all. I mean, that first debate, there was no control at all. They just the moderator might as well not even been there. Right. But it didn't work to Trump's favor. And Biden just said, "Oh, will you shut up, man?" And that was there you go again of the whole debate. That's the line everybody remembered. That's probably what got Biden elected.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because the list of demands that the RNC has published as to whether or not they would change their rules, in addition to some things that sound sort of technical and probably not all that important, committing to hold a debate before the start of early voting, agreeing not to hold any matchups after the deadline to mail out the absentee ballots to military personnel and overseas. Those both seem kind of wonky about the timing. But term limits for commission's board members, ban on partisan political activity by officials and their staffers. That seems more generic, and I think like everybody would sort of agree to that. But here's the key, exactly what you said. Make the moderator selection process transparent and adopt a code of conduct for the debate moderators. So this is really where it hurts. This has Trump's fingerprints all over it.
Yeah. At any rate, I mean, we'll probably be talking more about that, because we'll see if the debates actually happen. Probably if Trump is not running, that probably will happen. All right, we are big news in January 6th. Of course, some news broke today with the January 6th committee. Maybe we'll have some time to discuss it. But the big news over the past week is that we are having the first charges that probably will lead to very significant sentences if convicted. But the leader of the Oath Keepers, it was reported today, had a big cache of weapons, has been charged with sedition, seditious conspiracy, and about 10 other people, total of 11 people, have also been charged. This is a big turn in these things, and so far nobody higher up, but it's a question as to who they were conspiring with. Will this draw more people into it? But we are talking about a conspiracy to actually interfere with a constitutional process. This is upping the ante, and this is, by the way, FBI charges, has nothing to do yet with the January 6th committee. There's a lot of news out about the January 6th committee, a lot of subpoenas going out, and a lot of interesting things happening with them in a court decision. Maybe we'll get to that. But what do you want to say, Dave, about about these new charges? Because it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting that just hours before Rhodes was arrested, and I believe that the Washington Post reported this because I didn't see it firsthand, but Fox News' Brit Hume tweeted out just hours before the arrest, let's base our views on whether 1-6 was an insurrection. Let's base our views. Yeah, I guess this is what he said. Let's base our views on whether 1-6 was an insurrection, on whether those arrested are charged with insurrection. None so far. None has, basically. Right. And then the question is, well, what is the charge of sedition, seditious conspiracy? So I looked it up, and the 1993 case that seems to be where they're pointing at the requirements for the threshold. It's called United States versus Lee. And it says proof of a conspiracy rests on establishing that everyone in the conspiracy shares a, quote, a unity of purpose, the intent to achieve a common goal, and an agreement to work toward that goal, unquote. So a lot of times many times, it's only been used a very limited amount of times. I shouldn't say many, but it's very, very difficult threshold to actually reach. So that's why people are saying it's not clear that they're going to be able to make the case. But if they do, then it will sort of document for the sake of history that, in fact, there were people that were involved in violence with the intent to disrupt the election. And we could talk about more of the details, but these guys, Stuart Rhodes, leader of the Oath Keepers, what they've been accused of doing is bringing small arms to the Washington, D.C. area, engaging in combat training, making a plan to react and support the Capitol riot. And they were able to somehow get access to their signal, encrypted communications, which kind of is a side note. That's pretty shocking to the world that the U.S. government has the ability to, at will, kind of obtain encrypted messages and decode them. But that everybody sort of knew, but now it's official. But yeah, so the idea is that they did make the plans. It's not the same as treason, but Lawrence Tribe, a professor of Harvard, said that the crime is in effect treason's sibling. So it's walking right up to that, most heinous of the word treason. It's it's awful to think about. So lastly, I would say really only, two or more people have to work together to overthrow the government or prevent the execution of its laws. And so that on that standard, sort of the English language standard, it seems like that's why they're making this case, because it's a logical thing for people to wrap their head around.
And the question is, this is a little bit beyond. Everybody else so far has been tried. Serious crimes, pardon, not tried, but convicted so far. But there will be trials at a certain point because not everybody's entering pleas. But it's been serious crimes of hitting police and the rest. Other people just getting for vandalism and trespass. But now we're seeing like 4 and 5 year sentences for people who actually attacked police and did more serious stuff. Now we're getting into something that gets to the meat of the matter of what people are concerned with. Now we're seeing conspiracy. I don't know what's being alleged about what actually happened on that day, if they actually, did certain things. We'll see. And as to whether or not the conspiracy expanded into, any other names, I imagine if they did, there might be some deals being made, but will they hang tight, and as G. Gordon Liddy did, for instance, and not say anything, take pride in not doing that. But it doesn't. It seems like they probably wouldn't be part of any Trump plan because, man, that would have been really stupid. And these people don't seem like they had it together that much. You would think if it was part of a Trump plan, they would have been a little bit better at what they did. But I don't know. That's very interesting, though, that the FBI is making these charges. And this late in the game, too. You'd think that they would have had it, but maybe they just broke the codes, or maybe they've just made the case. I don't know. And are they the real targets? I don't know.
Well, we've seen, for example, 6:30 in the morning, Congresswoman Boebert tweeted out, like, today is 1776. And there's been other leaks of sort of unsubstantiated connections between circles of people I think that this is going to be sort of released slowly over time. But with respect to what we're talking about today, as opposed to the implications across who all knew and when did they know it, it seems like Rhodes is in a lot of trouble. Shortly after the November 3rd election, he told his followers, and this is a quote, "Prepare your mind, body, and spirit because we aren't getting through this without a civil war." In December, he promised there was going to be a massive bloody revolution. And should a peaceful transfer of power occur, and in the lead up to the Capitol riot, they purchased thousands of dollars worth of weapons, ammunition, and tactical gear. So they do have a track record of communications out to he and his team about what they were planning on doing. Just to correct sort of what I said before, I was looking for this number. It's only been 4 times in 80 years that this statute has been used against white right-wing extremism in the United States, and it's in part because it's such a very difficult challenge to prove in court.
Now, this is coinciding with a lot going on with the January 6th committee. A bunch of subpoenas went out yesterday to Rudy, the Kraken, and other lawyers, the legal teams. Now, they're moving beyond just the riots and what happened on January 6th. We're now talking about people pushing the big lie. And on a regular basis, too. They'll probably all take the Fifth or whatever, or cite privilege or something like that. But they're being asked for their records. A bunch more of additional subpoenas went out today. Some of the more conservative members of the Trump entourage. And then today, the ruling came down from the Supreme Court, basically upholding the appellate court decision to allow the archives documents to be released, not on the basis that a subsequent president can't invoke the privilege. Kavanaugh has indicated that he would probably hold that a no longer president can invoke that privilege, even if the current president doesn't care to. But on the basis that these were records that didn't meet the criteria for privilege anyway, the Meadows communications. So the massive amounts of records are being released from the archives to the committee. I don't know exactly what's in them. I haven't really heard a whole lot, but it looks like the committee is going to be very busy in the time they have left, assuming that the House flips. as it's expected to.
And that's part of what I was going to say too, is that we've got this Justice Department, FBI side of the House that's going to continue with whether or not the Republicans take back control of the House, whether or not the January 6th Select Committee is disbanded come this time next year. This is still it lives outside of Congress, outside of the political sphere. And again, to document for history. And I do want to mention, I saw Adam Kinzinger, one of 2 Republicans who are on the committee, and one of 10 Republicans who voted to impeach.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an interview with him. I forgot her name. She's the woman who is the head of the host of Frontline. Firing Line. Hoover.
Yeah.
Her last name's Hoover.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I saw her interviewing him in his office, and he basically said, I can't answer. Like, she asked a really tough question, and he said, we're going to investigate these things, and they will come out. Like, there will be a timeline that is coming out. We just can't. There's no leaks. There's no talking about it right now. We're like, as you see things unfold, we're just connecting the dots here, and they plan on, it's going to take months till we see how these Venn diagram circles overlap.
Yeah, well, and there may come a point when the evidence is so apparent, maybe they really can't take this thing apart. They might replace everybody, but we'll see. So anyway, we'll be discussing a lot more. Takes us to the next topic.
The Court of Appeals here in Washington has ruled quickly in our favor. We are getting a clearer picture of what happened, who was involved and who paid for it, and where the money went.
Mr. Meadows received numerous text messages, which he has produced without any privilege claim, imploring that Mr. Trump take the specific action we all knew his duty required.
We do not take this vote lightly, but this committee and this Congress is left with no other alternative when, in the midst of an investigation of this magnitude, we are stonewalled at every turn by those who played a central role in the planning and execution of the January 6th attack.
The committee favorably report to the House the committee's report on a resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find Mark Randall Meadows in contempt of Congress.
All right, the story that people aren't really talking about as a political story, but kind of has me scared because I haven't really thought about the possibility of nuclear war, of war between very powerful nations happening again. Is of course the what's happening at the Ukraine-Russian border. This is it looks like it's about to happen. I mean, it's very serious. Putin has demanded that there be assurances that Ukraine never be allowed to enter NATO. I'm not sure how anybody could promise that anyway. I mean, you could make that declaration, but that could be reversed later. But he wants that declaration. NATO's not willing to make that declaration. Ukraine doesn't want to make that promise. So it is looking more and more like there could be war any minute. There was reports that Russia was going to do some type of false flag maneuver, but there's like 100,000 troops and all kinds of equipment. There are anti-tank weapons being sent to the Ukraine right now. The Ukrainian army is being trained to use it. They are better prepared than they were when Russians did an incursion 5 years ago, but Russia is also better prepared. This could be a very bloody war. It could just be a border war for people to make their points, or it could be all out. We don't know the extent of it. But one thing I'm noticing is, despite all the other things, there isn't a lot of grandstanding among politicians here. Nobody's criticizing Biden. Nobody is slamming. Even Donald Trump is staying quiet about it. So there isn't a lot happening. With Afghanistan, everybody was out in front to criticize Biden and slam him for that. Everybody's staying quiet, maybe because, it's such a delicate situation that they just don't want to die. I don't know. I mean, it is a serious situation that nobody really wants to talk about in political centers. You hear it, people are being interviewed, but it's just experts talking. And it's sort of like, I don't know, it's like one of those movies where, we're kind of, it's in the background. kind of like the zombie apocalypse. I don't know. I hope it's not that serious, and hopefully, if there is shooting, it'll be quick and over. But it looks like by all indications, it's going to happen. Putin has to do something, make some kind of statement in his mind. Dave?
I would say that, what intrigued me about how you frame this is, like you said, it's the story people aren't arguing about it. People aren't grandstanding about it. And I think it's twofold. One is the gravity. It's about the existential threat to the planet, basically, as we know it. And so there's that element of it, which is very real. The Union of Concerned Scientists, when Trump got elected, they changed the clock from minutes to seconds. And the idea, the simile here is that there's a clock, and however many minutes we get close to midnight, that's when there's nuclear Armageddon and the world is over. Under Trump, we went down to like 45 seconds. So we're that close. It's the closest we've ever been anyway. And that's kind of why I think there's less grandstanding, because of it's so dire. And then where are we today? So Jen Psaki, communication spokesperson for the White House, for the president, said, and this is paraphrasing, we're now at the stage where Russia can launch an attack on Ukraine at any time. The situation is more stark than it's ever been. The Russian government has been preparing to evacuate its embassy staff and families in early January, and so from Kiev. And so you need to ask the Russians why they did this. We don't have an assessment of why they did this. And so there's these negotiations that are going on. I think the Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, is meeting with Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, on Friday, and they're going to talk about this current impasse. So this reminds me of Texas Hold'em, where you kind of got to keep your powder dry where you can, but it's getting ugly, and you push in all your chips when it's like okay, war to settle the score. We're all gonna all the chips on the table. When it comes to the Cold War, when it comes to Russia, we've never had all the chips on the table. It's always been this back and forth over a very long period of time. And so when it comes to, this other media leak, a CIA official stated Russia is preparing a false flag operation as a pretext for an invasion. That's to CNN. So CNN has been told by a CIA official that Russia is going to make it look like United States and Ukraine provoked an attack on Russian citizens in Ukraine so that they can invade. And so that's why the situation's so dire.
Although I will say that probably was to preempt it. So maybe they won't bother at this point. That was probably leaked out so that Russia says, well, darn, we probably won't bother with that. We'll probably just invade. But, that's... So
I'm going to do a little fast forward here just for folks. A lot of people, they just don't remember. In Ukraine, there was the Orange Revolution in the winter of 2003 and 2004, where the longtime dictator was removed from office. He was a Russian-backed authoritarian. And so the United States and the West has been involved in trying to help with the reform government in Ukraine ever since. Crimea was annexed in 2014. So that's the area of southern Ukraine that's down a warm water port. Their Navy's only warm water port. And so Henry Kissinger himself has said, when advising, the presidents like Obama, he said, "Look, this is one of their first most important things that they have on the planet, and you have to acknowledge that this is so important to them that they'll do anything." And so that's why.
And not to, also to be fair, it's ethnic and language Russian-speaking people there. I mean, there's a history there that it maybe should have been part of Russia to begin with, not to justify invading to deal with it, but there is a historical possible basis that should have been part of Russia. But anyway, that's not how you deal with it.
Right.
But,
but the truth is, it's strategic first principle, and at the strategy level, that's how that was viewed. Somewhat differently, but more culturally, like you said, the Donbas region and eastern Ukraine, separatists there, same year, 2014, and the U.S. was talking about arming those rebels, but it was not escalated at the time. But subsequently, Trump did, as part of his Russian reset, he did arm the rebels, and so behind the scenes, there'd been talks about Ukraine joining a Western economic alliance, and in exchange for that, they'd also have to be in partnership talks with the West and NATO. So it's been an extension of the Cold War, and Russia just wanted to kind of stop it and say, we just want to promise that NATO will never include Ukraine, and the United States and the West doesn't want to do that. In fact, just so you know too, I mentioned Henry Kissinger. Well, George Kennan, the American diplomat under President Trump, under President Truman, who authored the doctrine of containment that defined the Cold War. He died in 2005 at 101 years old. But one of the things that he stated publicly, the West should never have Ukraine join NATO because it will be perceived as an existential threat. So that's kind of the background. And lastly, there's one little piece of information that we don't get publicly, it's not part of our public discourse too overtly, is that last week Yahoo reported that the United States CIA is training Ukrainian special forces and intelligence units in the United States for a central role in an insurgency if Russia does invade or when Russia invades. This program actually started back in 2015. So that's the context. 2014, they invade Crimea and Donbass. 2015, we start planning for the war. And that was continued under Obama and Trump and Biden. So this is a bipartisan issue. I think that the state apparatus that we talk about sometimes in somewhat dark or cryptic terms, this is their arena. And I think that's why it's not as political.
There's a lot going on. And you could argue that this is kind of their Cuban Missile Crisis. We had to take a stand there. We almost risked war with the Soviet Union back then because, the Cuba is right there and they're putting missiles right there. Really doesn't matter in terms of missile technology these days, but back then that was a big deal, and we had to take that stand. At least our hawks thought we did, and so that but this is that is what they perceive it as, and whether or not it has to do with politics of machismo or really is an existential threat, who knows? But it's just I'm not a military expert, but it's but at any rate we're there. But again. I'm not seeing Mitch McConnell or any of them, calling Biden weak on it or anything like that. It's very interesting that plenty of it was slammed all throughout Afghanistan because that's not an actual threat to us, right? I mean, it just but nothing here, and that just tells you how serious it is. That nobody wants to mess with it, at least not now. Maybe if things go badly, they will later, but not now. So. Anyway, well, unfortunately, I think we'll be talking more about that in the future weeks. Okay, that takes us to our last topic. We've come back to what we've been talking about for a long time. We do have one map to talk about, but I want to talk about a change because we reported on the quote-unquote final map, and this is to emphasize that none of the maps are final. Because we have gone through the phase. There's probably about a dozen or so states that haven't come up with their quote unquote final maps. Actually, maybe a few more than that. But when the legislature or the commissions pass their maps and they become approved by the governor or whatever process, then come the lawsuits. And if you go to 538, again, I keep plugging them. In the right-hand column of their main page, you'll see the redistricting, an excellent, really user-friendly interactive map where you can slide over each state that has them, and even the states that don't have their final maps, and it'll tell you what the status is. They've introduced a new designation for each of them. Up in the right-hand corner, when you click on the map, it'll say in litigation in terms of the status. And there are, about 7 or 8 states in litigation. And Ohio was one of those. And their state Supreme Court, we talked about Ohio a couple weeks ago, and Ohio is one of those where the Republicans just gerrymandered it to the point of ridiculously, to the point, this is where Biden got something like 45% of the vote, maybe even a little bit more, and yet only 2 Democrats out of the 15 or so, congressional entourage that was going to delegation, that was going to be there, and and out of the last time, I think they only had 4, and it got rejected by the Supreme Court, the tiebreaker, by Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, who is a Republican, who is one of those Republicans, kind of like Sununu. I mean, I think there's, a lot of this happening, who is like saying, this is enough. This is embarrassing. This is, you got to send that back. We need to look at a different process here. This is so, partisan that it's just absolutely embarrassing. You've got 9 days to draw a map. I think we're getting towards that now. I think we're about halfway there. And it needs to be more fair. Now, it's not going to be that much more fair, most likely. I'm sure the Republicans will draw one up that's kind of like the other one that'll maybe allow for 3 or 4. It'll probably let the longtime Congresswoman who represented the snake by the lake retain her district, and and they'll probably say, well, I guess that's the best we're going to get, from the court. But it really is it's being overturned, and this isn't even on the basis of racial discrimination. That's going to happen in other cases, in others, although there arguably was some in Ohio, but that wasn't the basis. It was the basis that it violated the state's rule against partisanship, hyper-partisanship. And that's the first. The next one is probably North Carolina, in which they split a primarily one black district into 2, and put 2 of them into one, two black incumbents into one. I mean, it's and there's litigation in Michigan where Democrats have benefited, but it's still disempowering black voters, and and the rest. There's litigation in Texas. There's litigation in Alabama. They're saying, look, the black voters are something like 40% of the voters, and yet we're a majority in only one of the 7 districts. And Georgia, pardon me, well, there is litigation in Georgia. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, it's probably going to happen in a bunch of other states. Dave, what have you got to say?
Yeah, what I thought was most interesting about Ohio, and thanks for framing it for us, the state Supreme Court in a 4-3 decision, so not unanimous certainly. Right. They just kind of acknowledged prima facie, like on the face of it, that the bipartisan Ohio Redistricting Commission somehow came up with a map where 73% of the districts were going to be Republican-leaning seats, where districts representing 73% of the state. Whereas in any, I think here's the exact quote. It violates the partisan fairness requirement of the Ohio State Constitution, considering that the GOP generally musters no more than 55% of the popular vote statewide. This is Justice Michael Donnelly, and he said, by any rational measure, that skewed result just does not add up. And I think that's like, how else, like mic drop. Like, that's the Supreme Court saying, come on, man, like, what did you guys do here?
Yeah. Right. So we're going to take a look at, we're going to look at one map today. And for those of you watching on TV or YouTube, you can see the map and compare of Georgia and compare it to the old map. And again, it lets you go back and forth, and you can see what the Republicans have done here. Where the Democrats have one place that they have an incumbent, Sanford Bishop, down in the left-hand corner, the west corner, southwest corner of the state, and where they tend to get other people elected are up in the suburbs around Atlanta, particularly to the south of Atlanta. If you look at the old map, you'll see that there were a couple of partisan, of highly competitive districts, the 6th and the 7th, and Carolyn Bordeaux actually managed to have an upset win in 2018. She's a professor who got elected in one that kind of leans Republican. Well, if you go to the new map, you'll see that in Georgia 7th, they've stuffed her in with Lucy McBath. And they are now, those are 2 African-American incumbents who are now going to be running against each other. And if you go to the north, Georgia 6th is now an open Republican seat, rated R24, which is almost guaranteed Republican. So they basically stuffed 2 African American candidates together, marginalize the African American vote, and if you go look up in the right-hand corner, you'll see that purple marking in litigation. It is in litigation. In the old days, back when we had a Voting Rights Act with teeth, this would not be allowed, definitely. We'll see what happens. I'm not sure what Georgia state laws say, but we'll see if if the Supreme Court, what the Supreme Court says about this, but it definitely has been tailored to give the Republicans at least one more seat here and remove one of the Democrats. And bear in mind here, all of the House Democrats in the South are black. There are no House Democrats that are white in anywhere in any of the southern states, except Florida.
I had never, sorry to interrupt you, but I had never heard that before.
Yeah, other than Florida, but that's it. Dave.
Yeah, real quickly, so you can do the last state. I'll just say that I thought that the thing that was most that stood out the most here is that it just seems so blatant and obvious that you put Democrats in districts where they have almost all of them have 50-point advantages, clustered around the city of Atlanta, and they, the one seat that is up for grabs is so marginally leaning Democratic that this seems sort of like a textbook example of racial gerrymandering to the just on first blush.
Well, the one that they've left open is going to be a Republican. If you go to the north of those blue states, it's Georgia's 6th, and you'll see it. There's no incumbent right there. It's heavy Republican.
I didn't mean open. I meant second. The second district, which is it's contested. The only contested district, the only undecided district that has a chance of being a 4th Democrat is.
Well, it probably will be a Democrat. Sanford Bishop will probably win re-election there, but it's one they can challenge later. That's the only one where there's a chance that a Republican that's going to be contested. The rest
outside of Atlanta.
That's down by Columbus.
But I'm saying outside of the city of Atlanta, this is the only spot in the whole state that has a chance.
Yeah, that's right. Outside of Atlanta, that's right. It's Augusta, Savannah. They've got it all locked up as Republican. It is embarrassing. And this is where it's at. Gerrymandering throughout the South. This is that we owe this all to Tom the Hammer DeLay. Anyway, that's where it's at. We will be talking about this litigation. We're in litigation phase, although there are plenty of states that don't have to get their maps in for quite a while. Okay, we are at the end of the show where we provide predictions. Dave, what have you got for us?
So this week, I think it's more of a general prediction as opposed to usually we're specific. But I think that Virginia Governor Youngkin, his first public announcement that he made as governor is a reveal of the Republican playbook for how we'll expect to see congressional races in the upcoming term. I think a lot of these themes will be held or promoted. You'll see the common thread here. He basically said that his goal is to drive down the cost of living and have the best schools, the best jobs, and protect liberty. So he signed six executive orders. It's nine executive orders and 2 executive directives. And I'm going to give you the themes here. No critical race theory was number 1. Parents decide when children wear masks was number 2. These are executive orders. Restoring the integrity of the parole board was number 3. Number 4 was the Virginia Attorney General is going to restore the power of parents by investigating school districts that take away their power. We need transparency, apparently, in Virginia. And he was going to conduct an audit of the government and keep the government open for business, eliminate COVID regulations, and reduce 25% of all regulations in the whole state. He's directing all the state secretaries to identify the 25% of regulations that they would eliminate, and he said he'll be upset if they don't find more laws to eliminate because they want economic freedom. Eradicating human trafficking, that's a throw, I think, to the QAnon folks. That was Executive Order 7. Executive Order 8, ensuring religious freedom, and number 9, withdrawing Virginia from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. So he's saying that combating climate change is really just the increase to cost of living. So he needs to protect Virginians, that it's nothing more than a carbon tax, and that it's a bad deal for everybody. So he's ensuring that finally he's ensuring that no one be required to be vaccinated or share their vaccine status with their employer if that employer is the state of Virginia. So this is you see the themes here. That's what they're going by. That's what we can expect in the upcoming legislative races across the country.
So much for that guy being a moderate. Okay, I'll keep mine short. Popular Arizona Congressman Ruben Gallego is going to challenge Senator Sinema in the primaries of 2024, but he's not going to wait very long. He's going to wait until the election, the day after the election in November, and base it on her basically causing the Voting Rights Act to fail. So that is my prediction. We will see if I'm right on the day after the election this coming November. I will actually comment on it at that time. Until then, or until next week, stay informed and stay engaged.